What we do with Parent Summit Africa is to help parents experience an awakening that will cause them to take a part to creating a change in themselves individually, as well as commit to raising a wholesome 21st century child. And as we do this collectively, we are building the kind of society that we want to see. Our mission with the Parent Summit Africa is to create a platform that equips parents with the skills, strategies, and resources for self-transformation and raising wholesome children. Our vision is to effect social and societal change through parenting education, especially to change the narrative of Africa and the African child. Hi, my name is Vivian Okoye. I'm the convener of Parent Summit Africa. I'm a certified child psychologist, a parent coach, and a trained doctor of optometry. Parent Summit Africa is powered by our online parenting school, the Vivian Okoye Parenting Academy. We started Parent Summit Africa in 2017 to gather parents from all over the nation and beyond to start up relevant conversations around raising a wholesome 21st century child, as well as thinking about our contribution to sustainable development and nation building. We do this because we believe that at this point, our plan as a nation for sustainable development should shift its focus from just systems, institutions, and policies to actually creating a plan and strategy for a change in the attitude and mindset of its people. Because the people drive these institutions, the systems, and the policies. So if on an individual level, we're able to get it right with our attitude and our mindsets, then we can drive the institutions and policies in the right direction. Until we are able to do this, until we're able to create change in attitude and mindset on an individual level, then we will not experience any tangible change.
Hi. Good evening. Welcome to session 2 of the Parent Summit Africa 2024. And with us is Mr. Innocent Usar, who is taking us through how you can heal yourself so that you can actually parent in a more empowering way. I met Mr. Usar in 2019. Mr. Usar is the pioneer trainer of NLP in Nigeria. He has raised many therapists. He was the one that introduced me to NLP. As a matter of fact, it was after attending his training that I saw the balance between psychology and faith, because prior to that time I had thought that psychology was in one extreme of woozy, and then faith was in one extreme of not accommodating science. So he brought that balance for me after I attended his training. He's an amazing teacher. You would love him, and he is here to teach us. So please pay attention, listen, take notes, note down your questions. There'll be time for question and answer. And again, welcome to Parent Summit Africa 2024 session 2. Thank you, Mr. Usa, for doing this with us. I would leave you to do your thing. I'll just go away from the screen now.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Depending on where you're joining us from, I'm really excited to join you today and to have this conversation about parenting. We are striving to raise mentally strong children, and I listen to my brother and my friend Victor Ekobasi. Ete, how you doing now? You don't disappear from my radar. I don't dey look for you since I don't see you. Hello, everybody. I hope you're fine where you are. Like Frank Police used to say many years ago on NTA, he used to say, "Do you know where your children are?" But question I want to ask you is, do you know where you are? Do you know where you are? A lot of people are lost. A lot of people don't know who they are, whose they are, where they're coming from, and where they're going. I'm really excited to join you today to talk about the link between parental healing and resilient children, building strong children mentally. I want to start quickly by talking to you about me, my parents, my background, and my children. Um, Many years ago, I was growing up in Kaduna. I grew up part of my years in Kaduna, and I also grew up in Sokoto State, in a part of Sokoto State that today is not in Sokoto State, but it's in Kebbi State. It's called Burning Kebbi. While growing up, I happened to witness a lot of conflict between my dad and my mom. A lot of conflict. My dad was a soldier, my mom was a petty trader. And so my mom was coming from a failed marriage, and so she wanted to um, really strive and succeed. And she moved from Benue State after the Nigerian Civil War to Kaduna, where she met my father. And she was really working hard to make ends meet because she had children from the previous marriage that she had left. She was forced into a marriage with a much, much older person, way, way, way back then in the early 60s, late 50s. Young girl married up to a much older person, more than 20, 30 years older than her. And as she was struggling in Kaduna to make ends meet, she met my dad. He was a soldier, and he had an interesting background that I hope to talk to you about later on. But basically, my father and my mother, as I started to grow up in the middle to late 70s, I started to see that they had a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting, a lot of issues, a lot of quarreling, and I would see them quarrel and settle and quarrel and settle. I remember a particular day, one of the relatives that had been invited to settle the quarrel had come. And as usual, they would spend days talking about the things that had happened. Days because my mom would recount her part of the story and my dad would recount his part of the story. And then the person who had come to resolve the story would give his version of the story. But that went on for not one day, not 2 days, but I think like 2 or 3 days. And it was so, so challenging. Just as it was challenging for me years later when I became a man of my own, and I had one desire seeing my father struggle as a father and as a parent. I wanted to be better than my father, better than him, especially because I'd heard him threaten me because we had a totally dysfunctional relationship. I had him threaten me. I heard my father challenge me. My father has said to me, you will never amount to anything. My father has said to me regularly, you'll be a beggar on the street. So I had one desire for success in life. My desire was to prove my father wrong, and my desire was to see my father um, say to me that I was successful, prove him wrong. And I also wanted to show him pepper. I had a revenge plan because I had seen my mother go through hell and high water. And of course, my brother and I, who were had children from this marriage, were going through a lot of stress. And so I decided that I was going to deal with my father. And part of my joy was seeing my father one day say that when he came to visit us, my mother called me and said, your father said that you are very rich. He had visited us in Abuja and he had left. And he said to my mother, you know, you are very rich, and our son is very rich and we're suffering. So my mother asked if I had told my father anything, and I said I didn't. And I went on to my son's room to investigate and find out what did my mother see. What did my father see that he told my mother back in the village that their son was very sick? Then I saw what my father had seen. It was shocking what I saw that day. But that shock reminded me of another time when, somebody had just given me a brand new phone, and this person adored me, so gave me a gift. I kept the gift at home and went out. On my return from my outing, I was in Jos at that time with my young family. My son, who was about 2 or 3 years old, um, apparently had done something really terrible I didn't know. So my phone, I noticed when I picked it up from where I had kept it, brand new phone gift, was shattered. The screen was shattered, was broken. And I was livid with anger. I was raging and I yelled, who broke my phone? Who did this to my phone? And something interesting happened. Up popped out a young man who was 2 or 3 years old. His name was Jesse, my first son. Today he is 18. He popped up and he said, proudly announced himself and said, Dad, I am the one. You know how somebody would do something really good? He didn't even know that what he had done was really something that would make anybody angry. And I was in shock. I didn't know what to say to him. Today, though, I know something that I came here to say to you. I came to talk to you about the link between parental um, healing and building mentally strong or resilient children. Many people are not aware that children are deeply affected by the kind of emotional state or emotional well being of their parents. Uh, there are many things that people don't know. For example, if you have a parent who has dealt with some things in the past and they have healed from those things, like a parent who had a past issue with rejection, uh, and they have dealt with it, that same parent in the future or today, now as a parent, they are able to model acceptance, self-acceptance, and teach their child to embrace that part of them that is imperfect, to embrace their own imperfection. Now, another thing that is also possible on the other hand, when you as a parent has unresolved challenges, unresolved trauma, unhealed issues, for example, you are overreactive, or you something happens and then you blow up. Something happens that is tiny and your response to that is over the top, or sometimes you simply are in that place where your parenting style is inconsistent. One day you are saying one thing, the next day you change the standard, and the next day you change the standard. What happens basically to that kind of parent is that they create insecurity in their child. You create a child who is not sure about what is acceptable, who is not sure if they are doing the right thing, and who is not sure if they are in good place with dad or with mom. Now, how the question you may be asking as you're listening to me now, and you're asking is, how does parents' mental and emotional state affect children? How does the parents managing the way they feel, the way they are emotionally, the way they respond, the way they have grown, the way they have healed or not healed, how does that affect children? I like a lot of the things that Victor Bassi said, and one of the key things I like to say to you is that between ages 0 rather to 7, which is called the imprint period, between age 0 to 7, parents are not aware that our children are like sponges. What they do is that they absorb every emotional energy around them. For instance, if a child has a parent that is frequently stressed, a child would have the tendency to become anxious. They would regularly find themselves in a place where they are trying so hard because they want to fix things that they think are wrong. Or when you have a parent, on the other hand, who, in the face of challenges, this parent is calm, this parent is cool, this parent is collected. What a child learns is resilience and the ability to solve problems. Okay? If a parent has a situation, for example, where they lose their job, but they remain composed, they lose money, but they remain calm, they lose uh, something, maybe something wrong happens in their business or whatever, but they remain in charge. They are not exhibiting or behaving in a manner that is untoward, in a manner that is extreme, in a manner that is threatening, in a manner that they are where they are flying off the handle. What tends to happen is that the child learns to deal with situations where they are adaptable, where when situations change, circumstances change, they also adapt. But when you have situations where a parent panics, or they are shocked, or they are behaving in very adverse situation in a manner that is exhibiting a lot of panic, what happens is that that kind of child might internalize a sense of helplessness, panic, and fear. Okay. So the reason why we're going through this conversation this weekend is because we want to break generational cycles of trauma. And breaking generational cycles of trauma requires a lot of deliberate and intentional work. If you, as a parent, grew up in a family that used harsh discipline like many of us have in Africa, what happens, okay, is that that kind of parent has the tendency to repeat that type of harshness in their own family when they are raising children. I often would say to people that every kind of dysfunction that you saw, every kind of dysfunction that you experienced, that you were raised in, and every kind of dysfunction that every kind of way that you felt, that the things that you heard, you as a parent later on in life has the tendency to repeat that, to do that to your children, except there is an intervention. And it is likely that for somebody who is watching this and listening to this today, this may be your own intervention. This may be that intervention for you, because many people are not aware that from every such experience, they need healing. One time, in the UK, I went to do a training, and then we were talking about children who experience physical abuse, beating, and all of that. And we had this white guy who was, Caucasian guy who was teaching. And then in the room were a few Nigerians, and one of the Nigerians said something that really, really embarrassed me in a way. And on the other hand, I wasn't disappointed or shocked, because this is something that I have come to face and experience regularly. This guy just said that, it is the beating that made us become who have become. And I took an exception to that, because many people are not aware that it's not the beating, it's who we became in spite of that. We became who we became because we encountered an intervention. We became who we became because we were able to manage those adverse and hard situations, make meaning out of life, and sometimes, many times in life, much later in life, with the benefit of hindsight, many people were able to see the good intentions that were behind the parents' behavior. I, for one, when I was growing up, I didn't have any sense of seeing the good that was in my parents' behavior. I saw my father especially as evil, as wicked. I hated him, I despised him, and all of that. My healing journey took me to the place where I had to forgive my father. My healing journey took me to the place where I needed to recognize that my father was not the problem. I moved from my father being the problem as a child, looking at my father's actions, interpreting all of those, as now interpreting it as something that was holding me back, for which I needed to forgive my father and move on. If I didn't forgive my father, I was holding myself captive. I was preventing myself from moving forward. I was preventing myself from seeing life clearly. I was preventing myself from being free from pointing fingers consistently at my dad, thereby preventing me from taking ownership and taking responsibility for where I was in my life. I had become a parent already, and I was already visiting my children with the same anger that my father had. I was already visiting my children, particularly my first son who was born at that time before my intervention journey started, my healing journey started, with the same harshness. Now, I wasn't beating my son like my father would beat me. I wasn't cutting my son like my father cut my hands in those days when he was teaching me how to read with a razor blade. And he would say, read the book. And I don't know how many of you remember, Edet is 8 years old. He lives in Calabar with his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bassi. My father would ask me to stop. This is him checking what I had done in school when I was back home. And then he would say, show me Calabar. And I have memorized this because I'm afraid he's going to beat me and I'm afraid he's going to yell at me. And so I would point to eight or edit or some other word that was not Calabar. And my father would bring out a razor blade, cut my hands. And I have often shown people in my trainings, in my events, the scars and the wounds that show this challenge that I had with my father at that time. And these things today, a lot has happened to me, and I'm going to share a little bit of that as I go on. But when I forgave my father and I discovered that I was not doing the forgiveness for him, that I was doing it for me, when I realized that, I did it for my freedom, I did it for my removal of blame and pointing fingers and accusation at my father, to my ability to look inward, to look at the man in the mirror, to self reflect. Many parents, many people who have grown to be parents, many people who have become parents have lost the ability of self reflection. They are not able to look at the person in the mirror and say, why am I where I am as a parent? Some people are even angry that they are parents because they became parents by accident. They got pregnant or they got someone pregnant and they are not married in some legal way. And so they see this child coming as a problem, as an accident, as some bad luck. And so this child regularly gets pummeled, get yelled at because daddy is angry, mommy is angry, or whoever is in the custody, has the custody of that child, is upset, seeing the child as the sign or the consequences of some love misadventure or some mistake in early life. But for me, I forgave my father. And I don't have the time to tell you all of that. It's something that I usually would take hours to explain that journey to people. But I began to notice that if change was to happen in my life, it was up to me. If transformation was going to happen in my life, it was up to me. If I was going to be able to come out of my shell, leave the shyness that had dominated my life, build capacity to be able to to structure my life in such a way that I would now be outgoing. I would now cast away shyness. I would now be more assertive. I would now be more confident. I needed to deal with all of the internal inhibitions that were holding me back. And the major reason why I was held back, I couldn't come out and connect with people at work. I couldn't stand in front of people and speak. I couldn't talk to strangers. I couldn't make eye contact with people when I spoke with them, was because I held a lot of grudge because of the things that had happened, especially between my father and I, and the things that I was exposed to as a child, watching my father fight with my mother regularly, watching my father fight with my mother consistently. Man, in fact, I saw my father beat my mother all the time, all the time, all the time. It was at that time I vowed that I will never beat a woman. And of course, I remember getting married, and one day I was on one of the anniversaries, I was bragging to my wife that, she was lucky that I had never beaten her. And she said, really, you have never beaten me? I said, yes, I've never beaten you. I've never pushed you. I've never done anything of such. Am I lying? And she said, well, the truth is, you've never beaten me, but is it okay if I go ahead and tell you what I really believe? What is the truth? And I asked her to tell me what was the truth. And she said, you have never beaten me, but every time you have been angry, every time you raise your voice in anger, I wish you had beaten me than used the words you used to talk to me. Did you hear that? She said, I wish that I was beaten than the sharp arrows and javelins that you threw at me. I was in shock. When I asked her what those words that I was using, I'm ashamed to mention them now because they were the same words I had grown up hearing my father say to my mom, and I said I would never do it. It doesn't matter what you saw, what you witnessed, the environment you were raised in, and you vowed that you will never do it. If you do not go through a healing journey as an aspiring parent, or as a new parent, or as a parent who wants to stay now, the tendency is what you experience, you will transfer it to the next generation. And you will do it unconsciously. You will become like the condition that raised you. You will become like the condition that you found yourself in without even knowing, and then you will transfer that to the next generation. So many times, people don't realize that what they saw is in their heads. Those 20 years, oh my goodness, light has gone off here. Let me see if I can use something else. Niger, Niger, Niger. Sorry, guys. Aha, good, found a way. Before I go on, I'd just like to ask that you please leave your comments, your questions somewhere, your questions somewhere in the your comments and your questions and your feedback on some of this on this conversation and what I'm saying. Leave your comments, leave your questions so that I'm able to attend to them at the end of my presentation. In case you're just joining us halfway, my name is Innocent Usar. I'm a trainer of neuro-linguistics programming, and I'm talking about how to raise mentally strong children as a parent who has gone through their own healing journey, who wants to begin their own healing journey, or who is intending to begin their own healing journey. NEPA just struck here, so as you can sense, I am having to do this with some artificial lighting. I hope you're seeing me, and I hope you can hear all that I am saying clearly. Now, where was I when this NEPA people took line? So,
you were at the point where you were saying if we do not consciously heal ourselves, then we
yeah,
would definitely unconsciously transfer our experiences to our children, even if we have vowed.
yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So even if you have vowed, and I regularly meet people who say, I will never do this, I will never do that. But I found myself becoming that type of a parent, that type of a husband. And one of the worst things that can happen to children is them seeing you as a parent behave to their other parent, their mother, their father, that which you do not intend for them to model, because it's not what you are saying. And I heard Victor say that very clearly. It's not what they are saying, what you are saying as a parent that they will do or become. It is what behavior is being exhibited in front of them that they will model and become. Okay, so I started sharing some stories, and I'm going to come around that. But instead of yelling when a child makes a mistake, I'll give you one quick example. One of the things I realized affected us was a lot of glasses were broken when we were growing up, glass plates and glass cups. And I told my wife when I got married that for every beating I got because of a broken glass plate, and you were forced to lie and you were forced to not be honest about who broke it, break it, and you hide it under somewhere until they find it some other day, break it and not disclose. I said, no, let's reward our kids and encourage them so that they do not lie. So what we started doing with our kids once they were born is we taught them not to lie. Till today, my kids do not lie. The people who work with us know that our kids do not lie. Okay? And what do I mean? When a plate is broken, when we go out, something happens, they are in a hurry to say, I broke it. They're in a hurry to say, so thing happened and this person was responsible. Because as you are honest, we don't just we reward the children for honesty. So while I was punished, yelled at, disciplined for breaking a glass plate with our kids, we will reward them for being honest about what happened. And then we will have a different conversation entirely on how not to repeat that behavior or get into that situation that is destructive or that is harmful anymore. So instead of yelling when a child makes a mistake, What many times need to happen is that many parents are not aware that the parent needs to pause, take a deep breath, and do something else. Many parents, however, have grown up in a harsh family where what they do is that they unconsciously continue to repeat the pattern that happened to them. Repeat those patterns, the things that they saw, the things that they heard, they become it, they internalize it, and they produce those things, and they even brag and say, "This is what changed my life, so I'm going to do it." What's that popular one saying? They quote, they say, had spare the rod and spare the rod and what? Spare the rod and something. I'm sure somebody will be
Spare the
writing
rod
somewhere.
and spoil the child.
Spare the rod and spoil the child. I have hardly used that saying because the rod, as many people are not aware, is that the rod means discipline. The rod means doing something unpleasant as a repercussion for the behavior. And children hate a lot of things worse than beating. Children hate to be isolated. Children hate to be kept in a place where they don't want to be. Children hate to be taken out of the action. Children hate isolation. Children hate not having access to the fun time and the great time that they should have had. You know, children hate to be told because of this that has happened, you are not having access to so and so benefit. So recognizing this kind of conversation and then beginning to be that kind of parent who will choose discipline in a very positive way. Positive discipline, setting boundaries, and Victor talked about setting boundaries. Dealing with children with empathy would help the parent break the cycle of having children experience the same harsh discipline that you experience. When many parents are having situations where they are yelling at their kids, where they are doing a lot of, very, very terrible things that they experience because a child has done a very small mistake. Most of what parents and most of those behaviors, by the way, have become unconscious. And so until you get help with them, heal yourself, look on the inside, go in there, do some external change up, you will not know that as a parent, you can pause, you can take a deep breath. You can calmly begin to think about the situation. Then you can have a conversation with your child, explain what has happened, explain why you are angry, explain the consequences. What happens is that when the child consistently see the parent behave in such a manner, you are modeling emotional regulation, as psychologists will call you, and teaching the child accountability without fear, accountability without withdrawal, accountability without all of the harshness, accountability by just simply developing a relationship with the child. Now, many parents have not identified their unhealed wounds, things that have happened to them that they were wounded, where they went through pain. And there are many signs that will show you that you have unhealed wounds and unhealed trauma. Some of them will be things that you are really very familiar with. The first one is anger. A parent who is shouting and snapping at a child for very small mistakes. That's a sign. Anxiety, when you are overprotecting a child, but you're not overprotecting a child in the child's best interest, is because the parent is fearful. Today, for example, many of us who are parents are afraid to allow our kids to travel the same way your parents allowed you to travel when you were younger, to ride the bicycle even in the neighborhood, to cross the road by themselves. If I tell you the story of how I, with my 14-year-old son, tried to get him in Lagos to cross the road where BRT buses were crossing because his mother told me suddenly that she had been sending him across the road to the supermarket, I was in shock. I tiptoed around, followed him to the mall to see him do that, buy something in the supermarket, do that transaction. I didn't want him to catch me. He almost caught me tiptoeing and following him. His mother didn't know I was following him because I was shocked that this boy had been. And then I remembered, guy, you were 15 years old when you left Burning Kebbi, went to Sokoto, took a vehicle to Jos, from Jos to Benue. 15 years old. I went to Benue. I don't know how many, several hundreds of kilometers. Went to Benue to ride Jam in 1989. Okay, so it's crazy how that we were trusted with certain decisions, we were trusted to do certain things, but the unhealed parent is afraid because they have anxiety. They are overprotecting their child. That's a sign. The other sign is emotional detachment. The parent is struggling to connect with the child. They do not know what the right thing is to say. Victor gave several very good examples of how to connect with children. He gave example with children. Okay, struggling to connect with your child. I struggled with my first son, like I said initially, until I began my healing journey. He was born in 2006. I began my healing journey in 2008, 2009. And so 2, 3 years were lost to me continuing. All I just didn't do was I didn't hit him, I didn't beat him, but I was still threatening. I was still, behaving certain ways and all of that. And sometimes you have a parent, for example, who avoids showing affection. Some parents cannot even hug their children. And the reason may be because they are not used to it, they never received it. Do you know that every day as a parent, you owe your children 8 hugs for their complete development? Let me say that again. If you're a parent, you're an aspiring parent, you owe a child, each of your children, 8 hugs a day. And I'm talking about 8 complete hugs. You hug your child this way and hug them this way and hug them. And it's challenging when we don't even have time to exchange words. Victor said 3 hours in a what? In a week. And then we are not even able to give a child 1 hug a day because we never experience a hug. And all we do is we keep tormenting and we keep blackmailing our kids and saying, when I was like you at the age of 13, I was walking 13 kilometers to school. When I was like you at the age of 13, I was carrying 13 drums of rubbers of water for 13 kilometers to fetch for my mother. When I was like you, those blackmails. My kid would always, Jesse would say to me in those days, he would say, Dad, what did you say when you were what? And he will repeat exactly what I said to him, as if to make me realize that, Dad, I'm not you. You are you. And the lesson sank in eventually. So you have a situation where many parents avoid showing affection because they've never received it and they don't know that as they continue to do that, they are distancing themselves from children. And so recognizing that pattern is the first step to change in your relationship with your children and in modeling what is right for them. How then do you change? For me, I went through therapy I spent a lot of money. I got experts in a field called neuro-linguistics programming, and I went through intense change work. I went through several training. It brought me to tears with a lot of issues. It brought me to healing. It brought me to confronting my issues. It brought me to forgiving myself for something as small as stealing my mother's 10 naira note to buy football. And when she found out I have 10 naira was missing, she was crying and begging and asking me for what happened to her 10 naira. And I said I didn't take it. And I saw my mom cry and cry and cry many years ago. I had to forgive myself for that. Forgive myself for peeing on the bed and taking my younger brother, and putting on that spot continuously, severally, where he was beating because I always would wake up and find out I had peed on the bed. The peeing on the bed and why I peed on the bed is a long story. We ate late because my mother closed from her business late. I was always at her business place. Imagine a kid eating 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the morning as dinner, and then sleeping. And so I struggled with peeing for years, and that ate away at my self-esteem and self-worth. And when I grew up in an age where when you peed on the bed, they took you out on the street and they started beating these Hausa songs, and the whole neighborhood knew that you had peed on the bed. So that ate away at your self-esteem and self-worth, and that affected you so many things. So I went through therapy. So the first thing you want to do is go through therapy. Get help with professionals. Don't just pray about it. This is you and the life you have lived for over 20, 30, in some cases 40, 50 years. So what you want to do is begin life afresh. Now, you have many times a tendency to go back to the past pattern, but with therapy, with getting help, professional help, it will provide a safe space for you to explore this trauma that is unresolved. What a therapy can do is that it will guide you as a parent who feels unworthy of love due to the neglect you experienced, and it will help you build confidence and create happy bonds with you and with your children. And then you will end that pattern of feeling unworthiness. Okay? Journaling has helped a lot of people. I haven't done a lot of that, but I've learned how some people have gone into journaling, writing about their parenting challenges. What that experience does is it helps to trigger and reveal some of the triggers that you have, the things that set you off on the loose. And sometimes as a parent you may notice that you are impatient. You may notice, that when you're helping change diapers and or bedtime things with your kids or routines, you can begin to see that those moments are moments when you're triggered, or doing assignments with the kids. Identify those triggers. Writing about them, it will uncover all of the chaos that happened in your childhood, so that you can know to treat them and deal with them at the root cause, because they'll be causing you a lot of stress and affecting your ability to parent properly and very effectively. The third way to get your own help is mindfulness. And this is simply the art of secluding yourself, taking in deep breaths, and doing some really deep, thoughtful exercises that will help you with reacting and responding in a very supercharged emotional environment. So, for example, like I said, when a child breaks a glass, breaks a bottle, instead of yelling at them, the parent who is mindful, the parent who has done a lot of these breathing exercises, the parent who has gotten help where they're able to meditate, would learn how to pause and speak to themselves and respond. I think it was Viktor Frankl that said that there is a gap usually between something that happens and your response, and that gap in between something that happens and your response is your power, your ability to respond. So when you are able to pause, then you can say to your child, let's sort this out together, let's clean it together. Okay, so when you address these wounds, when you address these challenges, when you address these past that you have, and then you embrace healing, begin your own journey, get help, open up, be humble. Some of us need to apologize to our children about things that we have done wrong. Mommy hasn't been a good mother all of these years. I'm learning a new way. Daddy hasn't. We've had students at our training have these conversations with their children, adults, children, parents have this conversation with their children and talk to them and say, mommy hasn't been a good mommy, daddy hasn't been available, and so I'm going to a school now, I'm going to training, I'm going through a process where I need to become strong. What parents do is they pave the way by doing so for their own children to now model the right behavior, become resilient in times of stress and trouble, and become the strong children that they are meant to be. For me, that day, when I saw my son raise up his hands and brag and proudly say, Dad, I was the one who broke the phone, I paused. I took a deep breath. I thought of what my father would have said to my son. And I said to him, son, what did you want to check? And he said, Daddy, I wanted to know what was inside the phone. That was why I broke it. And I looked at his face, he was innocent. So I just simply took it all in, and I asked him to go to his room, and I called his mom and I said, look at the thoughts I was thinking. I would have hit him, I would have yelled, I would have told him what my father would have done. That's what I would have done. Told him what my father would have done, told him how lucky he is, while yelling at him that I am not my father. That's what I would have done. But now I had learned a better way because of my healing journey. I had become a totally different person. As my father saw that property and told my mother that our son is rich and we're suffering, and I went to the room where my father stayed to check, what did my father see? Because I didn't tell him anything. What did he see that made him think that I was super successful? I noticed that in my son's room where he had stayed on this visit, coming to have his medical checkup. And by the way, I used to always make my father have medical checkups because I didn't want him to infect my mother with any funny thing because of his womanizing. So my father saw my old check stubs and how a lot of the check stubs have recorded monies that I had spent in millions and millions and millions and millions. And because of that, he told my mother, our son is very successful. And so unconsciously, one of my desires for success in life was checked. My father had finally acknowledged that I was successful. Years later, I would discover that this same event was the reason why I became mediocre. I became somebody who didn't want to be stressed, and I became somebody who was just not pushful anymore. And then I found out that my reason for success was wanting to prove my father wrong. I needed to get a new reason for success, which was wanting to have a better life, create better options, help more people, do a lot of good, and be a blessing. And so I altered my reason for success, not just from not being like my father, but wanting to aspire to create a life that had more abundance, more good, and that would be a benefit to mankind. And finally, as I was growing up, seeing my father fight with my mom and have those visitors come settle, on that third day, I can't remember whether the second day or the third day, as the visitor blamed my mother again for the opting time and said, woman, you have to be patient. Men, you have to treat them with respect. And inside of me, I went, oh no, not again. My mother is going to take all the blame for everything. And I vowed that this was exactly the type of parent that I would never want to be, or the example in my home that I would not want my children to see. Any question? Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you so much. That was, I mean, it was very, very relatable. I'm sure that your story and your experience with your dad is very relatable to a lot of people. It's very relatable to me. I'm currently no contact with my dad, so
Hmm.
it's very, very relatable. Kelechi in the chat is saying very, very relatable. Um, there are a few people who have asked questions. This person says, "How do you reconnect with um, how do you reconnect with the hugging, even if you have failed to do so for some time and they are grown-up teens?"
So I'll give you a very funny story, very, very funny story about my hugging experience. I went to do this my change journey and healing journey
Is it me or is Mr. Usar? Um, I think his network is bad. All right. While we wait for him to come back, I'm sure that during one of our sessions, someone has asked this question before, and if hugging doesn't come naturally to you, because I've had clients who would tell me that they feel touched out, like they feel irritated when their children touch them, and those are signs to tell you that there is more going on, that it is not just about the hug. There is a deeper work that needs to be done, right? That's one way to think about it, to think about then starting your own healing journey so that it comes to you naturally. Another way you can do it is to actually schedule the hugs, right? So for example, now that you know that you need to give your children these hugs, let's say 8 hugs, and you want to start building that up, do you want to schedule it, right? Do you want to schedule it? So for example, when they come back from school, will that be a hug time? When you wake them up in the morning, will that be a hug time? For you who is asking, because your child is a teenager, you have to ask their permission. During Victor's session, he says something about rebuilding that connection. You have to first of all build the connection with them as an acquaintance, then as a trusted friend, and then as their parent. So you have to start rebuilding that connection. If you have been in our community long enough, you will hear me say you can start at any point, and it's simply saying to your kids, like your teenage child, to say, I don't like the way things are going on in our relationship. Can we have a do over? And just have that conversation and listen, and then build up from there, right? Someone says Victor is in the chat. Victor can be Victor said just waylay them with hugs. You have to ask, or you have to ask if they are teenagers, respect their boundaries, respect their decision. Remember, we want to grow mentally strong children, and one of the ways that we do that is also to help them know that their words matter, that their space is respected, and all of that. For those of you asking about healing journey, how do I start? Where do I start? We have done a lot of that in the past. Just a couple of months ago, we did From Trauma to Thriving Architecture, which is a program. It was a group program that came with therapy, that came with healing for people who want to navigate understanding their trauma and moving away from how your trauma is stopping you from achieving the things that you want to achieve in your life. Is not restricted to your parenting. Trauma stops you from making money. Trauma stops you from building. Trauma stops you from believing in yourself. Trauma makes you sabotage yourself. So we have programs that we have curated for you. We do not leave you. When you come for Parent Summit Africa, we do not leave you to just walk away. We know that this information comes and comes and comes, and you're wondering sometimes, how do I really implement them? We have it all covered, and we will provide solutions for you. We'll give you a workable plan, right? So this program is powered by Mind and Wellbeing Network, like I told you. And in Mind and Wellbeing Network, we provide therapy, we provide mental health education, and all the works, right? Who else? How do you start this change with my dad's relative who had issues with my mom? How do you start this change with my dad's relative who had issues with my mom? The thing about healing is that you're only responsible for yourself. You can only, no, regardless of what another person did to you, you can't control their actions. You can't drag them to therapy. You can't drag them to have this conversation. You only decide to work on yourself and to work from where you are. Remember what Mr. Usar said? He said that he needed to forgive his father, not because of his father, but because he was ready to let go and ready to move on with his life. And that is really what healing is about. It's about taking responsibility for yourself, for your actions, regardless of what the person has done to you, deciding that I'm no longer going to let this thing control me. I'm ready to let it go, and I'm ready to move on. So with this, your question, you cannot do anything about your dad's relative. You can only decide to move on from that and take back the power from whatever that experience was for you, right? So guys, that would be it for this session. We have another session coming up soon, and that session is on how you as a parent can work together with the schools to ensure that you are raising and fostering mental resilience and mental well-being for your child. Don't miss that session. If your child goes to a school, if your child is in school, regardless of what level of academics they are, primary, secondary, university, how can you work collaboratively with the schools to ensure that your child is growing in their mental strength, and that whatever the school is doing is fostering mental well-being for your child? That is the conversation we're having in the next session. We would share a bit of...
Hello, my name is Tochi Opara. This is my 8th year being a mom. And one day somebody said to me, I love the way you speak to your children like they're adults. Man, I laughed. But I can tell you for free that I wasn't always like that. In fact, as a first-time mom, I was living a life of default. But from the moment I encountered Dr. Vivian, enrolling in the Vivian Okoye Academy, and also attending Parent Summit Africa, things changed a whole lot for me. I became a more conscious and intentional mom. I began to understand exactly the way to connect and address the child I have in front of me. Like she always says, it's all about understanding the child you have in front of you. We just bonded better, and even to discipline. In fact, there are so many things I can outline, so many benefits that I can outline since I encountered Dr. Vivian. And now that the Parent Summit Africa 2024 is around the corner, you should register, because I'm sure you want to raise a mentally strong child.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vivian. Have been a great source of support and inspiration to me. Learning from you has taught me a lot over the years. You have truly made me a better father and parent for my kids and entire family. I took my first course with Dr. Vivian's Parental Academy in July 2021. That's Ultimate Parenting Bundle, and it was amazing. And that was after following her on Instagram for a while. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, ma'am, for all you do and for the impact that God is bringing to families through you. God bless you and fulfill His purpose for your life in Jesus' name. I look forward to this summit, and I know that it's going to be a blessing to everyone. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Phoebe. I live in Nigeria. I'm a mom to 3 adorable children. My first encounter with Dr. Vivian and Parent Summit Africa was sometime in 2017, just when I was about joining the parenting journey, and I must say it has been very phenomenal. I like the fact that Dr. Vivian is very straightforward, very relatable in her classes. She gets to hold your hand through a journey. In 2024, I joined her Parenting with Calm challenge, and it was a wonderful, wonderful challenge. I recommend all parents I know to Parent Summit and to Dr. Vivian's program, because they are programs that are designed to help you navigate through your parenting journey. Thank you.
So thank you. If you have signed up for Parent Summit Africa, you would have access to a lot of resources. You will get to know everything that we offer, both in the Vivian Okoye Parenting Academy and from Minds and Wellbeing Network. Please stay with us. If you didn't sign up, if you stumbled on this video on YouTube, then go and look for the registration link and sign up so that you have access. You're in our email list and we can send you emails with resources and with anything that we have to offer. Our goal is to support you. 1 hour event cannot address all the parenting challenges that you have, but we have created packs, we have created solutions for you, and we can only offer them to you if we have access to you. So click that link, make sure you're registered, make sure you're in the email list so that you can get access to everything that we have in place to support you. Thank you again. Just a reminder and a shout out to everybody who has made this program possible. We're giving a shout out to Mind and Wellbeing Network, and we're giving a shout out to Smartphone Productivity Club. Smartphone Productivity Club is a club that teaches your children digital literacy, how to use their devices. Your children are already on their devices anyway, but are they wasting away their time? Are they just consuming what other people have created? Or do you want them to become creators themselves? If you answered yes to that question, then you need to watch out for Smartphone Productivity Club. Follow them on all social media handle and stay in touch. If you attended the Parent Summit and you want your child to attend any of their program, they teach children how to code, they teach children how to design Canva, they teach children how to edit videos, they teach children how to create ebooks and animations. My daughter is signed up to them to start her own YouTube channel. So whatever it is that you want your child to learn and you want them to learn it at Smartphone Productivity Club, if you join Parent Summit Africa, you get a 30% discount on any of their program. So be in touch. If you're on the WhatsApp group and the Telegram group, just drop a message and we'll link you up with them. Please follow them on all social media handle. And in the next 2 minutes, we're starting the next session, which is on how parents and schools can collaborate to ensure that your child is growing mentally strong and is building their resilience. See you in that next session. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you. Bye.